Hey, what's going on? I wanted to show you Korg Gadget. It's so sick. Take a look. I love Korg Gadget so much. I think that it is such a sick tool and it's so underrated, and I'm not sure why people aren't talking about it. Maybe people are using it and they just aren't talking about it. But I figured I would do like an overview of it and just sort of talk about my favorite features. It's not going to be super in-depth because it is pretty deep. I'm just going to talk about my favorite things and why I think that maybe you should give it a spin, just play around with it. All right, so what is Korg Gadget? It is a music production suite, and it sort of, to me, feels like a groove box. And it is a collection of drum machines, synthesizers, there's guitar amps, and then there's also some tools to record audio like vocals and also send Midi out to external devices. It's really, really powerful for something like the iPad or the iPhone. If you're an Ableton user, you'll probably be at home with Korg Gadget because it functions like Ableton in the session view. You are able to sort of build your scenes and then you can just play through them. One of the other things that's really great about Korg Gadget is that it exports really well to Ableton. Korg Gadget is available on all of the iOS devices, so your iPad or your iPhone. It's Mac software, so it's a standalone software, or it is a VST plugin. It's also available for PC. There's a lot of ways that you can integrate it into your current setup. For me, the way that I like to use it is a sketchpad. I'm gonna go into more detail about my favorite features. If I don't hit something, or if there's something that you're curious about, just put it in the comments below and I'll try to address it. I plan on doing a little bit more on Korg Gadget because I'm like fascinated with it. Let's go ahead and open this up. This is Doomed Notice. And when you first open up a new project, right, they have these things organized. So you have access to all of your drums, bass guitars or bass synths, your straight up synths, keyboard stuff, your audio. So you've got just a regular audio recorder, like a tape recorder. You have a guitar amp sort of thing, like an amp sim, and then a bass amp sim, and then also your MIDI output. We've got a couple different drum machines here, something like this. We'll open this up. Right? And then there's different kits. Maybe we go for this other drum machine. I don't really think that anybody needs those sounds at all. Maybe, come on, man. This one is super sick because you can load your own samples into it. So if you have Dropbox or iCloud Drive or something like that, you can just pull your own samples into it, which I think makes this very powerful because if you're looking for something like a circuit rhythm, you kind of have this. Yeah, you lose the tactile control if you don't have a MIDI controller for your iPad or your iPhone. However, it's pretty sick to be able to just have it right on your phone, the sampler on your phone. Okay. One of my favorites here is Tokyo. And Tokyo is a very simple, it's almost like a modular thing. There are like 4 different modules. You have a kick drum, a snare drum, a tom. And I find this one to be the most inspiring because it feels like I'm working with 4 different synths. I love opening this up and just exploring. Sometimes I'll build a track just with this. I love this so much. Okay, this is my favorite part about Korg Gadget is the synth collection that's in here. There's a ton of different stuff and you can also buy additional ones. I'm just gonna show you some of my favorites. We're gonna start with Phoenix. OBX, it's an Oberheim emulation. Sort of like OBXD sort of thing, and it just sounds good. Oh, see, I can't really actually play. I love that synth. I think that's crazy. That one's free. That one comes with it. My friends, dudes, it's Oberheim synth in your pocket. Yeah, maybe it doesn't sound exactly like the same thing, but come on, man. All right, 303 emulation. Ew. Let's try this here. I don't know how that works. I never really used a 303. Lexington is an Arp Odyssey emulation. Maybe we listen to a couple of these. Okay. Oh shit. Cool, right? Arp Odyssey. I'm not a big Arp Odyssey guy. I would like to maybe buy one day, or like actually play with one, but the interface, for whatever reason, I just don't connect with it. That maybe it's like too many sliders, and I feel like it was made for a scientist, and my brain don't work good, so I don't know how that works that well. I have a hard time programming it. Montpellier. It's a MonoPoly. Look. Let's take a listen to what it sounds like. Oh, shoot. Coming back to that. So because all of these things have to be smashed down into this format, there is sort of like a sacrifice in the GUI, but once you learn how to navigate around, you sort of just fly around. Typically there's sort of like a play section, so it'll have like your mod wheel and your bend and maybe some of the more like player type functions, and then there's typically more of like a program page. That's what this is here. The MonoPoly, right, has 4 VCOs, and they're accessed by toggling this switch. And I'm not gonna lie, it's a little fiddly, but all good. Same thing, you've got your VCF section here. You've got the envelope for the VCF, and then down here you've got the envelope for the amp. All right, let's keep on moving. Pompeii. Pompeii is the Korg Polysix. Same thing, this thing sounds great. Let's see if we get a brassy thing. That's not brass, hold on, let's see. Mellow? I don't know, that sounds kind of cool. It's like a little jazzy thing. Synth brass. Let's see. It's cool. Here we go. All right, you get it, right? Polysix. Here it is, it's Memphis, which is the MS-20. And if you've been watching this channel at all, then you know that I'm a huge fan of the MS-20. I recently sold my MS-20 after buying my second MS-20, but I don't necessarily need it because I got it right here. I'm not gonna lie. I think that this filter sounds super, super good. I think that they did like an exceptional job. It screams just like you would expect it to. Right, it's got this really great aggressive sound. That's pretty cool, I think, for an emulation to like get some of that grit. Here's the other thing that's really cool about it, patch bay, right? And so you have access to the patch panel. So we're gonna go out of the phones into the signal in on the external signal processor. We're gonna go to the bandpass output, and we're gonna put that back into the external in, right? You're not hearing anything. I'm gonna turn up the signal level. Right? And then let's adjust the bandpass filter and see if we can get something kind of gnarly sounding. No. We're gonna go directly to the filter here. We could throw this, the mod wheel into the total. There we go. Those are my favorite little gadgets that are in here. Now, there's a lot more to explore, and depending on your music making style, I might not have even touched on some of the things that you may be interested in. I'm gonna start this by saying that I'm not a very concise person, and it takes me a really long time to articulate ideas, so I'm gonna try to get this like as concise as possible. I'm gonna go over all the main features here so that if you decide to start using Korg Gadget, you'll have a good foundation to start with. Here are some important things to know, right? Up at the top, you've got this little square with the arrows going up and down. This allows you to expand different parts of your view. So if we hit this, it gives us a bigger mixer control for our different gadgets that we have. If we go into the gadget, right, if we click on it, if you use that button there, it brings it up or it reveals the sequencer so that you can get in there. Another big important thing is your function button down in the bottom left-hand corner. If you hit function, you'll see it gives you an overlay, so you have some options in your scene for deleting or duplicating, inserting, selecting, changing the bar length. Within the mixer, you're able to change the gadget that you have. You can delete it, you can duplicate it, you can freeze it so that no other changes can be made to it by mistake. If you go back in and you select function while you have the gadget open, you get a couple of different options. So you can change bar length of your sequence that you have. You can change the play mode so that you have it either looping or one shot. And then you also have an ability to change your grid type. Here's one of the features that I think that's very important for getting the most out of Korg Gadget, and it is your ability to assign CC knobs to your Midi controller. So for instance, we can go to filter frequency, I'll select it and then move a knob on my Midi controller, and then it assigns it to that particular knob, right? So if I were to do this knob here, you see that it changes to 15. Click off of it so that the function mode goes away. I think that this is pretty important because one of the biggest complaints that I hear about software synths in general is that there isn't that like tactile feel. For me, that checks the box. That works for me. Maybe it doesn't work for you, and that's totally fine. So down at the bottom next to your function button, you have all of the normal things that you would see on a transport. You have record, you've got stop, play, you have a loop button so that this will loop your scene. If you turn this off, whenever you play a scene, once it reaches the end, it'll just stop, which is fine. Tempo is pretty straightforward. You have your swing control in here, and that goes all the way up like that. You've got a tap control, and then you also have a metronome, which is super handy. Within the mixer, for each one of these individual gadgets, you have a couple of different controls. So you have solo, mute, Midi, and IFX. You have Midi, which arms the track, so if you just select the track, then it's gonna arm it anyways. And IFX, Gadget is like packed with all of these really powerful effects. We'll go through a couple of them. We're not gonna hit all of them, right? But you've got compressors, you've got EQs, you've got saturators, decimator, you have an auto filter, you have delays and reverbs. And when you add them in here, you get this nice little GUI, pretty straightforward. You have the ability to turn them on and off. On the master channel of the mixer, you have two different options at the very top. You have reverb, which is basically like a send reverb. And then you also have an option for two different limiters. There's the limiter, and then there's D-Max, which it costs $10, and I'm not gonna pay $10 for a limiter. If I limit anything, then I'll just use the built-in limiter. I think I did it. All right, to show some more of these features, I think that I'll need to start building something. So I'm gonna go into Tokyo, and I'm just gonna build just a very simple beat here. So let's do boom, boom, boom. There's three different ways that you can get notes into the sequencer. You can just program them in manually like that. If you have the gadget open, if you hit record, you can play on the keyboard, which has a scale function, which is sort of nice. Or you can play it in like the way that I like to, where you just hit record and use the Midi controller. I know that I want this sequence that I'm gonna build to be a little bit longer than 1 bar. So I'm gonna select function, and I'm gonna change the bar length, and I'll just go to 4. And it's gonna quantize for you, so that's really nice. And you can turn that off. You have the quantize button down here. Now, if you take a look down at the bottom here, you'll see this line that's sort of moving, and that had captured my automation. So if you select this, right, it brings up this display where you can see every single control for the synthesizer, which is so sick because you can just draw this stuff in here. Maybe we may want to develop this further. So what I'll do is I'm gonna hit these two little overlapping squares, which is to indicate duplicate. So now we've duplicated the scene. So we can start the scene. And when we want to go to the next scene, we just hit play. And when it finishes these particular scenes, it moves to the next scene. Let's go ahead and add another drum machine, and maybe we'll add some tops or something like that. Let's add this thing. Now, every one of these knobs also functions in the same way that like a Volca would, where there's motion recording or whatever that term is, motion sequencing. Maybe we can do something interesting with this. We're going to use our function control so that we can change some of the things that are within our different scenes that we have. Let's see, so we'll go function and let's pull out the tops here. Polysix. What was that first chord? I think that's it. Let's try it. I like this effect a lot. I think this is really cool. I'll go to effects and we're going to select sidechain, and then this allows you to select other tracks to use as the source or the key for the sidechain. I believe that number 2 was Tokyo, which is giving us the little floor on the floor action here. Let's see if that is or not. Let's add a MonoPoly. This is another great feature that is built in here if you make a mistake like I did, or you just want to be able to work with the notes that are within your scale. You can select scale, right? And then it will then just consolidate to all of the notes that are actually within the sequencer, which is really great. I'm going to try to pull out the notes that I played incorrectly. Let me show you this file menu. So you select this little paper file thing up here, and then you have an option to save, right? So you can save your project in case it closes or anything like that. And then you have an option for export, right? And so you can export this to audio files. So you could export out the master, you could export out the stems. You have an option for Dropbox, so then you can share it right there. You can export this to a standard MIDI file. This is my favorite thing, is this Ableton Live project. So you have a choice. You can export these to 16 or 24-bit audio up to 96K. You can just export out MIDI for each one of these, and it'll put this into your Ableton session file. If you have the VSTs, like if you have Korg Gadget installed on your computer, then you can export it out to VSTs, and then all of your modules or your gadgets will be there, so then you can use them. And then you can also export them out to audio units. For me, I'm just going to use audio because I'm going to want to process them and chop them up however I want whenever I get them into Ableton. Here's another thing that I really love to do with Korg Gadget: export and just selecting files and taking one particular track. You have the same option, 16-bit, 24-bit, up to 96K, and then you've got an option to keep the tail, or you can cut the tail so that it's a perfect loop, right? I like to go for this option here, and I'll just go ahead and put it at 24-bit, and we want just those top loops. Now that put that into my local files on my iPad, where I can transfer that to my iCloud Drive, or if I had Google Drive or Dropbox, or you name it, whatever you wanted to do. And then if you are using Ableton, you can just have a favorites folder for the things that you upload there. It's so quick. You can just, boom, pull that stuff in there. So it's a really cool ecosystem, I think. I didn't get a chance to talk about this. On last week's video, I was talking about this, and this is the iRig Keys 2 Mini. And it is super cool because it does not need extra power. It can just be powered off of the iPad, which is really cool because you just throw this in a bag with this, one cable, that's it. And the speakers that are on here, they're not the best, right? But they're loud enough. This works really good for a sketch thing. Or if you want, on the back of this, it has a headphone output. So you could connect your headphones to the back of it, which is really cool because then you've got a very immersive experience. All that stuff fits inside of a bag. If you have smaller headphones, then that works too. Korg Gadget is still available with all of the same gadgets that I showed you on the iPad, on the phone. So it is still really cool. You can have like your wireless headphones in and just program it in. And I know that like people are gonna say like, that's way too small. Can you see it? Look, I recognize that that's super small. and it's hella fiddly. But you can like zoom in a little bit. I think you can go to landscape mode, right? And that's cool. Korg Gadget 2 Korg LE is the free version, so you don't even have to pay for it, and you can just sort of test it out and see if you like it or not. I highly encourage it. I think that it's such a great tool, and yeah, you should get Korg Gadget. I have EPs, music on Bandcamp. They're in the description below. Take a listen to them. Have a good week, and I hope that your life is going incredibly. Okay, bye.